Hello, this is Soundout here, and today we'll be looking at the history of Kamen Rider Blu-ray and DVD releases in North America.
It's morphin' time!
So with the recent release of Shout Factory's Kamen Rider 01 Blu-ray, I was discussing on Twitter how there had been multiple Kamen Rider disc releases in North America prior to this. This is not the first. This is our first Blu-ray, but not the first overall. In fact, the first Kamen Rider disc release came in the 90s with Kamen Rider Zeto on the Sega CD. This was a CD disc that had video output. The Sega CD was an add-on to the Sega Genesis, and it was the first optical disc drive in the mainstream for video games. And while Kamen Rider Zeto is a movie, they turned it into a video game by putting arrows on the screen. So you'd see an arrow to the right, and you click to the right. And if you see an arrow to the up, you click to the up, and so on and so forth. The film was actually partially dubbed too. It's not the entire thing, I don't believe, but it was definitely a thing that existed at one point, which is kind of fascinating. I don't own a copy myself, also because I don't own a Sega CD, but it's kind of an interesting anecdote in Kamen Rider history that most people may not be aware of. But when you talk about proper home video releases, that truly begins with Kamen Rider V3. In 2001, the Hawaii-based JN Productions opened a new division called Generation Kikaida. The idea was to bring over many of the 70s tokusatsu series that had aired in Hawaii, providing English subtitles for them to air on TV broadcast as well as release on DVD. Now, initially this, of course, started with Kikaida, hence the name Generation Kikaida. So they did Kikaider and Kikaider 01. But the one that we're going to talk about today is Kamen Rider V3. So this is actually our first Kamen Rider show released on disc in North America. Now, there are some downsides to the set. We'll look at the set itself in a moment, but a brief history. So Generation Kikaida is a Hawaii-based company that is a subsidiary of JN Productions. In fact, I got to visit them when I was in Hawaii in 2019, and they were super nice and super welcoming, really great people working there. And they're people who are very, very, very passionate about tokusatsu. It's stuff they grew up with and stuff they appreciate and enjoy, and they wanted to put the most amount of effort into releasing these shows for the present day, the people that remember the shows in the past. Now, they couldn't get every tokusatsu series. I think the Sentai shows were locked out. And from my discussions with them, it sounds like these licenses cost them a pretty penny. Toei wasn't going cheap on these, which is unfortunate, because the downside to this set is while it's still available all these years later, it sells for about $140. And you have to order it either from Generation Kikaida's website or from their Amazon store, because they only have the rights to sell it within Hawaii. They can ship it anywhere, I think in the US, but it's stuck to being sold in Hawaii. So it's a bit more of a limited release. But that does not make it a bad release. In fact, this is probably one of the best tokusatsu home video releases we've ever seen. Let's take a look. Alright, so here we have the Kamen Rider V3 DVD set. And this is kind of an interesting cover, because, you know, when you look at it at first, sometimes, you know, it's like, is that a real cover? And it is. It's just, this is a very not well-used promotional image of the three riders together. It's hard to find this one. It does exist, it's just kind of really rare. What's kind of neat about the DVD packaging style is that, you know, you got an English logo that has the Japanese, you know, Kamen Rider there, complete series, but it does specifically mention from the creators of Kikaida and Cyborg 009, which is tying into Generation Kikaida's whole, you know, we release Kikaida thing, but also Cyborg 009 is a well-known name in the anime world. But you can see on cover, you got, you know, Shiro Kazami, V3, Ichigo, Nigo, Riderman, and then V3 on his bike. And then up here, you can kind of see you got Yuki Joji and Kazami Shiro, so the two riders there. The spine art's pretty good too. I actually really like it. It's very dynamic. You've got, you know, Shiro, V3, V3. You know, you even got the V3 belt logo down there, which is pretty cool. Taking a look at the back, if the camera would like to focus. So on the back, we got, you know, another shot of Kazami Shiro and V3. The nice little like copy text just kind of gives you a basic, hey, here's, you know, some of the people behind it. And then we got the bonus features. Now this is something really impressive. So the special features on these discs is one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Because in addition to having an interview with Miyuichi Hirashi, who played Kamen Rider V3, there's a trivia quiz, behind-the-scenes episode factoids is literally pages upon pages of text about the production, about the guest stars, about the suit actors, about everybody involved, every single little tiny piece of information. It is a book's worth of information on these discs, which is just amazing. In addition to that, you got karaoke, character profiles, you got some essays like Who Was the Masked Bugman, Destron the Army with Robots in Hell, cast and staff list, episode selection, English subtitles with expletives deleted options, so if you want like a cleaner version for kids to see, that's an option, and digitally remastered picture with sound and more. So this is off of, I think the video source is Toei's DVD release, so this still looks really good. In fact, it's looked a little better than some of the fan sub rips I've seen online from this show. So honestly, you're still getting a good result, even if this isn't the HD Blu-ray remaster. In fact, because, you know, there's several of us online that are not quite happy with how Toei did the HD remasters for the original Kamen Rider shows, so there is that. Taking a look inside, you actually get a little pamphlet here. This one is basically, here is your disc listing for what episodes are on what disc, which is pretty nice and straightforward. And then each of the discs here. So disc 1, it's got disc 1's got V3. Disc 2 has Shiro on it. Disc 3, also V3. Disc 4 is V3 on the Hurricane. Disc 5 is Rider-Man on Rider-Man Machine. And then Disc 6 is Rider-Man with rope arms. So, you know, you get like a good variety. And what's also really cool about this is in addition to the subtitles having multiple options and, you know, all the bonus features, they have animated menus, so there'll be like a little animation of like V3 jumping through the air before transitioning into the menu screen. It's very dynamic and very exciting, whereas I think the menus for later releases are a little more, you know, standard and generic. Animated menus are not a thing that companies do anymore, so it's kind of refreshing to go back to this and seeing such a beautifully wonderful, hyped up animated presentation just for the menus alone. Our next benchmark in history would be Media Blaster's Tokyo Shock release of Masked Rider V1. Now, this was the 2005 film Kamen Rider V1, released in winter of 2006 via Media Blasters, who were using the Tokyo Shock label for all their kind of J-horror sort of movies. Now, this was a DVD release, and it's out of print now, but there's hope at the end of the tunnel here. Media Blasters has recently been relicensing some of their previous DVD-only releases, and they've been doing Blu-rays. This includes Kamen Rider V1, which will be seeing a Blu-ray release alongside Kamen Rider the Next, Shin, Zeto, and J sometime this year in 2022. So we'll do a video on that whenever that materializes. But Kamen Rider V1 was essentially the first mass-market release of Kamen Rider because this thing was showing up in stores. I got mine from a Best Buy. And it was around for a while. And yeah, I mean, it's a decent enough release. I think they went with Masked Rider, not necessarily because that's Toei's official jargon, but more so because that would have tied into Masked Rider, the Saban adaptation that more people may have been familiar with than, say, the Kamen Rider name. But yeah, let's take a look at this very strange one-off release. So looking at Tokyo Shock's Masked Rider V1 DVD, I like the cover overall. It's, you know, it's kind of, you know, just Kamen Rider profile plus Kamen Rider on bike. It's got some copy text that says, you know, a hero born of loss will clear the path to justice. So something cool like that. On the side, you've got kind of the helmet silhouette there, which is actually Kamen Rider Nigo, not Ichigo, so technically Kamen Rider II. And then on the back here, we've got some other little details. Based on the popular original manga created by Shotaro Ishinomori. That's true, the film was more based on the manga than it was the original TV series. I really like this movie. Some people don't. I really don't like the next that much, but I like the first a lot. I thought it had a lot going for it. Seems to do the riders on their bikes here. Little, you know, bio there. And there are some special features. There is a theatrical trailer, TV spot, and a making-of featurette. Hopefully these will carry forward to the Blu-ray because Media Blasters has been able to get the rights to some of those behind-the-scenes things where other companies get an answer of, nope, you don't get that. Cracking it open, we got Kamen Rider V1 here with both rider helmets on it. And then kind of a blast from the past. Here's a Media Blasters Coming Soon guide for winter 2006. Which just has all kinds of stuff of varying quality that came out from this company around that time, including manga. They were doing a lot. They were doing a lot of stuff back then. But yeah, so you know, there it is. Also, rareflix.com, films everyone else forgot. Isn't that just Twitter? Anyways, so that's pretty much it for this release. Like I said, it's kind of outdated now. We are getting a Blu-ray later, but it's nice to see kind of like a, more retail-based, just general, hey, it was out there in stores sort of thing. Now we've come to the bulk of our topic, and that would be Kamen Rider Z1 on Blu-ray. Shout Factory released this January 25th, 2022, and, it goes for about $40, which is pretty impressive, because this is an entire series plus its movie. And, honestly, that's pretty amazing, because when it comes down to it, we never got any of the movies with Shout Factory Sentai DVDs, nor do we ever usually get sets just including everything, because this also includes compilation specials. So I think most people are familiar with Kamen Rider Z1 as it's one of the most recent series. So let's dive into the disc release and take a look at some of the details. Now, for those of us that pre-ordered through Shout Factory's website, there was a bonus poster included, which I hope possible future releases of Kamen Rider can get these, because, hey, it is the cover art for the Blu-ray on a poster, which is pretty cool, and I totally need to get this framed at some point, because it looks really nice. I do like the English 01 logo on there, too. So here we have our most recent release, the Kamen Rider 01 Blu-ray from Shout Factory. This is the easiest to get, the most available, the most current, and it is based on the first Reiwa-era Kamen Rider series, Kamen Rider 01, which aired in 2019 to 2020. Now, this is a complete series Blu-ray set, but there is some couple hiccups along the way. It's not totally perfect, but let's take a look. So, I guess the first part, this is the series poster, now with a Kamen Rider 01 English logo, but it still includes the Japanese logo's English text that says Kamen Rider 01 below it. So a little strange, but all right, I'm going to take it. On the side there as well. Then on the back, you can see, when dangerous culprits unleash chaos, a new hero arises. As well as just general copy text of what the series is about. A couple of screenshots, and it does say includes all 46 episodes, the movie, and special episodes. We'll go over to that in a minute. Also of note, it does have the Japanese DTS HD Master Audio Stereo, so this is a really great audio presentation. English subtitles, no English dub. And apparently Blu-ray producer Brian Ward, packaging designer Andrew Robinson. So there's your credits there. But it is DTS Master Audio, which is a very, very nice audio presentation. Visually, there's a little bit of a hiccup. So for whatever reason, instead of getting the Blu-ray masters for the series, which was the Blu-rays released in Japan, they were given the TV broadcast masters. So you'll see in the episodes the white text in the first few frames that says, please don't sit too close to the TV. That would be gone normally on the Blu-ray masters, but instead they got either a TV rebroadcast or the streaming version of the show. So the people at Shout Factory had to de-interlace the video so there wouldn't be weird ghosting problems. And I want to really acknowledge that that was a lot of work that was totally unnecessary if Toei was not sticks in the mud about giving their Western fans a proper release. So thank you, Shout Factory. You do more work than you had to, but I appreciate all the work here because this honestly looks pretty good. Outside of that text on the bottom of the screen that does intersect with some of the subtitles, this is a very nice video presentation as well as audio presentation. It's really great to watch. I do really enjoy looking at it. So cracking it open, let's take a look at the discs inside. So first off, there is a little pamphlet. Sadly, this isn't a currently available on Blu-ray pamphlet, but this is what's streaming on Tokushoutsu. Hopefully these 3 shows will get released later, and you can see where you can view Tokushoutsu. So it's nice we have 4 shows streaming, even if only 1 is on Blu-ray. Looking inside the case, looks like a disc popped. This uses one of those like kind of thin spindled disc cases, so I would be careful because sometimes I notice the disc will just pop loose, which is sort of an issue. Now I'm gonna actually, why am I taking the discs out? Let's look at the inner art, just because there is inner art. So we've got Kamen Rider Vulcan and Kamen Rider Hirobi on the inside, and you can see the episode breakdown. So it's about 7 episodes of disc, which is great. It's HD, it looks beautiful. 7 episodes of disc seems good to me. And then the last disc not only includes Kamen Rider 01 Real Time, which is the sequel movie and the true finale to the show, which I think is an essential part to this set. It also includes the 5 specials that were done in the pandemic hiatus, which is the Two Presidents specials, the Super Work War, and then the Shooting special. These are all, I wouldn't say necessary to their overall show, but it's nice that they're included because they are clip shows of episodes. And a lot of these weren't fully subtitled by the fan subs, so it's kind of nice to have that included. This is going an extra step beyond what was necessary. And yes, it does include 35.5 in the normal lineup as opposed to being separate with those. So pretty nice. I do like that, you know, it's got kind of a really good complete feel. Now there isn't any Hyper Battle video stuff or any of the other spin-offs like Project Thouser, but you never know if we might see a secondary set later. It's just nice to see with those compilation specials that the chance at us getting more is definitely higher than 0. So taking a look at the disc art, it's the same for all of them, which you got, you know, your main riders, the 01, Hirobi, Jin, Valken and Valkyrie, Valkyrie and Vulcan, and that's the same for all the discs, all the way through the end, even if this one has real time. It does tell you what, it doesn't tell you what episodes are on what disc, but it does say at the end here, real time and special episodes, so that is helpful. Now, you're probably wondering about some subtitles, because I think the discussion of translation comes up a lot. Now, Toei does have their official spellings in English for a lot of these names, but I did want to kind of provide some of the basic ones here. So what I'll do is I'll say the name or phrase in Japanese, and I'll put what it is translated as on the Shout Factory subtitles on the screen here. So, first of all, we have Izu, Azu, Zeya, Magia, Arutoja Naito, Zetsumetsu Rise, Ansatsu-chan, and Kaban. So that's essentially some of the translations. So some of them are kept. I was really impressed that we got Magia and Zeya, because there's some translations that would go with Magir and there, which it works better for the, you know, pronunciations. Izu, Azu, some people like to go the phonetics IZU or AZU. IS, AS, that's the official spelling, and there's really nothing we can do about that. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the subtitles. In addition to that, the subtitles themselves are hard-coded, and that's probably a Toei prerogative. Like, you have to hard-code them so that if people are, you know, importing them from the US to Japan, they're not getting a clean presentation or whatever. But they subtitle all the songs. They also subtitle all the on-screen text with different text effects and fonts so that it matches and blends in really naturally. And what's really impressive is they actually subtitle every letter of the final attack. So when they flash the letters on screen, you have the English letters going from left to right across the screen. And then, of course, when they pull back and there's the text on the screen, you get the English translation. And I really appreciate that. It gives you a full experience as an English viewer of the series, and I hope that continues with future sets. Now, not everyone's going to agree with some of the translation decisions. Some people don't want all the on-screen text translated, but I'm really happy they did it as opposed to not doing it, because it gives it a more fulfilling experience for those wanting to see every detail of the frame. I would show screenshots and maybe some video clips, but Toei's been on people on YouTube lately, and I really don't want to risk it, so I apologize, but, you know, it does look really nice, and you can check it out on Tubi TV and Shout Factory TV's website, and you can look at Tokusatsu's Pluto TV stream. You can see how it is there before you want to buy the release to see if you like it, and I think that's a great way, is that the Blu-ray release is for those of us that want to own it, but if you want to just watch it, you have that option as well. Now, the last thing I want to talk about with the 01 release is there's been an issue with some people not being able to load the discs correctly. Some people have had the discs lock up when loading. And in fact, I've run into this a couple times. So for a good litmus test, I'm going to go through all the Blu-ray players I have in the house that are hooked up to TVs and see how they load. So let's take a look. Okay, so our first test is going to be in a Sony PlayStation 4, because it's probably the most common way people watch Blu-rays anymore, so let's see what happens. So when it's loading on this screen, none of the buttons work or anything, it's just trying to load the disc. So it does eventually load. Sometimes I wonder if it freezes for some people, but for me, it just takes forever to load on a PlayStation 4. And I think for some people they're like, oh, it never loads. And it's like, yeah, it does load eventually. It's just several minutes go by. And I'll put the timestamp up here at some point to go, yeah, it takes quite a long time to load these discs, which is very unusual. Not exclusively a 0-1 problem, but it's very strange how long it takes for these to load. So we're gonna try loading it on a PlayStation 3 next, just to see if something is gonna load a little better than on the PlayStation 4. So I popped the disc in and here it is. So let's boot it up once it sort of loads. It's been a hot minute since I used the PS3. And there it goes, which that just took a long time. I'll try to put a timestamp on how long it took to load the disc here, but it felt just as long on PlayStation 4 as it did on PlayStation 3. So next up, we're gonna try it on a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray player and see what happens. And it loads right away. So the two gaming consoles we tried, really slow. The dedicated 4K Blu-ray player loads pretty much automatically, which, hey, at least there's that. Okay, next up we're gonna test it in a PlayStation 5. Okay, that loaded much faster than the PlayStation 4 or the PlayStation 3. So there's that, but you know, this is not necessarily the best way to watch Blu-rays considering it's a really hard to find console. Okay, our last test will be a dedicated Sony Blu-ray player. Non-Ultra HD, just a normal Blu-ray player. And it loaded right away as well. So I guess the answer is it loads incredibly slow on PlayStations, which unfortunately I think is probably the most common way people watch Blu-rays. So I think the calls of it doesn't load, they don't work is a little unfounded. So I don't know if that's a conflict of disk drive being also for video games or the console just having more going on than a standard Blu-ray player, but for best results, use a standard dedicated Blu-ray player. So whether it's Generation Kita's V3, Media Blaster's Kamen Rider V1, or Shout Factory's 01, it's nice that Kamen Rider has some disc releases. I hope we get more, because in the last, 20 years, this is all we got. And, you know, I think we'll get more in the future. It seems like Kamen Rider's starting to pick up some traction, and hopefully Toei and the powers that be don't bungle it until they ruin this for everybody. But in terms of, you know, what we're looking at, I think the future is bright for Kamen Rider having a disc release. It seems like, from what I can tell, 01 sold really well. It was #1 on Amazon in the international category. It seems to have sold well on Best Buy. It sold out through Shout Factory like twice, so that's hopefully a good sign that it's exceeding expectations, and we'll hopefully see some of the other shows. Shout Factory's Tokusatsu brand has already licensed Kamen Rider Ryuki, and there's one other, Kamen Rider Kuga, and those would make great Blu-ray releases. So hopefully, you know, that's where we're going. Maybe we'll get Kuga next or Ryuki since they are a little shorter. The original Kamen Rider being 98 episodes, that's going to be a lot of discs. But hopefully we have more in the future. I mean, in the meantime, we do have Kamen Rider the First, the next, Shin Zeto and J coming from Media Blasters, which will be pretty awesome, I think. They've been doing a great job with their recent Blu-rays of some 90s Toei films, such as Sakaider, as well as some other Keita Amamiya directed films, such as Zeiram and Zeiram 2. So I'm looking forward to seeing where we go. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what you think should be the next Kamen Rider Blu-ray release, and tell me if you have any of these releases or even knew about all of them. I think most people don't know about Sega CD Zeto. That's a pretty rare one. But also be sure to hit the like button and the subscribe button and the notification bell to keep up with future uploads. I have more Kamen Rider as well as DVD and Blu-ray videos coming in the near future, and you can check the playlist at the end for any that you may have missed from the past. So also be sure to check out Hero Club at hero-club.com to keep up with future Kamen Rider news, my awesome graphic designer on Twitter at darkclaw643, and until next time, this is Soundout saying goodbye.